"Can you please hide me? My ex is watching." Those 7 words changed everything. Mira Cavell thought she was asking for safety. What she found was Cassian Vorr, a man whose protection came with power and whose smile hid an empire. One dance, one glance, one silent command. And suddenly, her ex wasn't the only predator in the room. When the song ends, she'll learn that some rescues come with a debt, and some debts are paid in loyalty, not money. If you crave stories where danger wears a tuxedo, subscribe and share. The next move will leave you breathless. Mira Cavell traced the seam of her violet gown, while chandeliers at the Aurelia Grand poured gold over tuxedos and smiles. Cameras blinked. The orchestra stitched the room in silk. Tonight should have been simple. Shake hands, charm donors, leave before midnight. It would have been if the past hadn't walked in wearing a bow tie. Under the 3rd chandelier stood Darren Holt. The grin that once rearranged her heartbeat. The eyes that trained her to doubt what she knew. He toasted a board member, then a woman with lacquered nails, and a chill slid under Mira's skin. "Breathe," she ordered. "You are not the girl he rewired." A tray offered champagne. She swallowed frost and steadied the flute before a tremor showed. Darren's gaze found her and lingered a beat too long. "Smile," murmured Kay at her shoulder. "You nailed the sponsor list. You won tonight." "He's here," Mira said. Kay winced. "The one with the spreadsheet voice." "The one who apologized with flowers and then counted the petals." She set the flute down. "I can handle a room." "I don't want to handle him." "Hide in the light," Kay said. "Too late." Darren peeled from his circle, adjusting his cuff before an argument he planned to win. He started toward her. Mira pivoted, straight into a man who didn't give an inch. He was tall enough to steal her breath and still enough to keep it. Midnight tuxedo. Immaculate shirt. 2 men in black stood 10 paces back, hands easy, eyes not. The stranger turned, and angles softened into attention. Sorry." Her voice thinned. This is absurd. Can you hide me?" His gaze flicked past her shoulder, measuring exits. "From whom?" "My ex. He's watching." "Then we dance." He set his drink on a tray and offered a hand as if he'd been waiting for the cue. His cufflink shattered light into stars. They moved onto the floor. The crowd opened as if nudged by invisible hands. For a few measures, the room became a pattern. Mira found the line of his shoulder, the place to rest her right hand, the safer distance to keep with her left. "Tell me where not to look," he said. "3rd chandelier," she murmured. "Blue pocket square." His mouth barely curved. "Noted." He guided without pushing, a lead that invited refusal and never earned it. A faint scar marked his jaw. His eyes, steel, thoughtful, returned to her face as if gauging weather. "What did he do?" he asked. "He made me small enough to fit in his pocket and called it care." "That's theft. You say that like you inventory sins." "Occupational hazard." He turned them so his back covered Darren. The 2 men in black adjusted in the periphery. "I'm Cassian." "Mira." Names traded. The music softened. Her pulse slowed. Darren's sightline broke, her spine uncoiled. "Thank you," she said. "For the rescue." "Let's not name it yet," he said. "He'll try again when you're alone." She risked a glance. True. Cassian's hand widened at her shoulder blade, a shelter rather than a claim. "You're good at this," she said. "Which part?" "Making a crowd move the way you want." "Good manners," he said, "and clarity." "I could use both." "You have them," he said. "You asked for what you needed." The compliment landed where armor used to be. The orchestra eased slower. Cassian drew her a breath closer, a promise that would hold only as long as she wished. "So," he said, "you work the gala." "I build the stories people tell themselves about goodness," she said. "Publicist." "And tonight's story? That we can polish harm into help if the check's clear." "Vested interest," he said when she asked about him. "I sign things. I keep things from falling." A donor tapped his shoulder. Cassian answered with a glance. Darren angled in from the left. Cassian turned her through a spin that placed a pillar between them and the smirk. The two guards stepped in parallel. Calm spread like ink. "Why does he still change your breathing?" Cassian asked. "Because my body remembers before my brain votes." "Keep the ballot box," he said. "I'll block the door." "Promise?" "Practice." The song ended. Applause threaded the air. Cassian didn't drop her hand. Darren stalled near the edge, irritated by geometry. Kay lifted her brows. Mira nodded. "Drink?" Cassian asked. "If it comes with 5 minutes of invisibility?" "Invisibility is overrated," he said, "but we can borrow the illusion." They stepped off the floor. A server arrived. Cassian passed Mira a glass and took nothing for himself. "What do I owe you?" she asked. "A conversation when you're not hunted." He checked the room. Blue pocket square drifting toward the bar. "Say tomorrow." She had a debrief in the morning. Still, yes. Hovered. "Maybe," she said, "if tonight doesn't follow me home." "It won't." He adjusted the line of her sash. "Leave by the east corridor. Take the service lift. My men will walk 30 paces behind." "Your men?" He didn't answer. The suits had already moved. Cassian inclined his head. "Mira." She should have asked who he was. She asked instead, "Why help me?" "Because you asked." Absurd and sufficient. She set the glass down and nodded. "Then we'll call it a dance." "For now." Mira threaded through the crowd along the route he'd sketched. At the archway, she glanced back. Cassian stood beneath the chandelier, a fixed point around which the evening rotated. Darren turned, searching. His line of sight missed her by inches. In the service corridor, the music dimmed to a heartbeat. Mira pressed her back to plaster and smiled. She had stepped into the oldest kind of story. Girl meets stranger, stranger becomes shield, and she wasn't naive enough to believe shields came unpriced. Tomorrow she would learn the cost. Tomorrow she'd learn who Cassian Vorr really was. By Monday she would know why Darren Holt chose tonight to reappear, and what he meant to buy with the ruin he once made of her. And that's where we fade into the backstory, how Mira earned this night, the charity she built, and the old wound Darren left behind that is about to reopen. If you're enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Your support helps us keep these stories alive. And trust me, the best part is yet to come. Now, let's get back to it. The service corridor was cooler than the ballroom, humming faintly with the sound of air vents and distant applause. Mira waited until the echo of heels faded before slipping toward the exit. Her pulse was still performing a private concerto beneath her ribs. She didn't look back. Not until she reached the valet doors and caught the faint reflection of movement in the glass. 2 suited men, posted by the entrance like statues carved from caution. Cassian Vorr's men. She exhaled slowly, told herself not to overthink it. Maybe he had them stationed for everyone's safety. Maybe that level of discipline was normal for someone who signed 7-figure checks. Either way, she wasn't going to stick around long enough to find out. She gave the valet her ticket and stepped into the waiting night, the city lights cutting through mist like blades. By the time Mira reached her apartment on Holden Street, her phone had lit up with 6 messages, all from Kay. "Kay, are you home yet?" "Kay, You left without saying bye. Kay. Also, who was the tuxedo god you danced with? Because that man moved like he owned gravity. Mira smiled despite herself and dropped onto her sofa, the violet fabric of her dress folding around her knees like bruised silk. Mira. Just someone who saved me from an awkward scene. Kay. He looked like more than a someone. Mira. I'll explain tomorrow. Maybe. Her reflection in the window looked different, sharper somehow, like she'd borrowed confidence from a stranger's composure. For the first time in a long time, she hadn't frozen when Darren showed up. She had acted. And yet, behind the pride, a quiet unease lingered. Who exactly had she asked for help? The next morning brought its own chaos, an inbox full of post-gala press requests, sponsor thank yous, and a meeting invite marked urgent from the event committee. Mira grabbed a coffee and tried to smother the nerves curling in her chest. She wasn't thinking about Cassian Vorr. Not really. Just about his stillness, how it made every movement of hers feel amplified. She was halfway through her to-do list when Kay's head popped over the cubicle wall. You made headlines, she said, sliding her phone across Mira's desk. The screen glowed with a Society column headline. Mystery Tycoon makes rare appearance at Aurelia Gala. Cassian Vorr, elusive chairman of the Vorr Foundation, attended last night's charity gala. Witnesses report he was seen dancing with a woman from the event's PR team before departing early. Mira's mouth went dry. That's not possible. Oh, it's possible, Kay said, eyes wide. You danced with Cassian Vorr? The Cassian Vorr? The one whose company has more shell firms than a hermit crab colony? I didn't know who he was. Mira's voice came out thin. He just helped. Kay grinned. Then you accidentally danced with the city's most terrifying philanthropist. Congratulations. Mira scrolled through the article again, reading lines that described Cassian in flattering yet distant language. Reclusive investor, brilliant strategist, rumored to have political ties. No mention of his guards, or the way he moved the room like an unseen conductor. She didn't expect to see him again, but by noon, his name appeared in her inbox. From Cassian Vorr. Subject, lunch. No greeting, no signature, just a location. Vermilion Terrace, 1 p.m. Mira blinked at the screen. He sent this to me directly? Kay looked over. You're going. I'm not. You are. It's a professional courtesy, and also possibly fate. Go. Mira hesitated, then closed the laptop. Maybe it was professional. Maybe it wasn't. Either way, curiosity was stronger than fear. The Vermilion Terrace overlooked the city's financial district, all glass and quiet power. Cassian was already seated when she arrived, dressed in a charcoal suit that made the daylight look pale. Rafe Doran and another man, taller, sharper-featured, stood a few feet behind him. Miss Cavell. Cassian rose slightly. You made it. I wasn't sure this was a meeting or an order. Does it matter? His tone was neither teasing nor cold. It simply existed. Please. Sit. Mira did. The waiter approached instantly, as if Cassian had choreographed his timing. I wanted to thank you, she said carefully, for helping me last night. His gaze held hers, unreadable. Don't thank me yet. The words landed heavier than they should have. She tried to smile. That sounds ominous. Gratitude requires safety, he said. You don't have that yet. Her throat tightened. Excuse me? He leaned back. Darren Holt. You've heard from him. How? Cassian's eyes didn't flicker. Men like him don't know when to let go. I saw it in his face. You make it sound like a diagnosis. It is. He sipped his water. He's not finished with you. Which means you're not finished with him. Mira stared. You talk like you've read my file. I read people. He set down the glass. And last night you looked like someone holding her breath for 2 years. The observation felt too close, too precise. You're good at sounding like you care. Do you want me to? She didn't answer. Rafe stepped forward then, murmuring something near Cassian's ear. Cassian nodded once. His attention returned to Mira. My apologies. Business never sleeps. Seems like it follows you everywhere. Only when it owes me money. The faintest trace of humor. Tell me, Miss Cavell, how long have you been with the Foundation's PR team? 2 years. Long enough to know who funds the facade. Mira frowned. I promote charities, Mr. Vorr. Not facades. Good, he said simply. Keep believing that. The waiter returned with coffee and pastries. The conversation drifted toward safe topics, event logistics, donor impressions. But every time Mira glanced up, Cassian was studying her as though she were part of a larger equation. His calm unnerved her more than any display of power could. When lunch ended, he rose and extended his hand. She shook it, surprised by the warmth of his grip. Next time, he said. Don't run. From what? From what follows you. He left before she could respond, his guards falling in step like clockwork. That evening, Mira stayed late at the office, trying to drown thought with spreadsheets. The glow of her monitor painted her hands silver. Somewhere between drafts of a press release, her phone buzzed. An unknown number. Unknown. You shouldn't have danced with him. Unknown. He's not who you think. Her stomach dropped. She didn't need to ask who it was. Darren. Mira. Lose my number. She powered the phone off, gathered her things, and stepped outside. The city had shifted shades, from gold to graphite. A black car idled across the street, too polished to be coincidence. The rear window lowered just enough for her to see Cassian's profile in the half-light. He didn't beckon, just watched, calm, unreadable, like he was confirming a prediction. Mira turned away and kept walking. Inside the car, Rafe adjusted his cuff and said quietly, You were right. He contacted her. Cassian's jaw flexed once. Of course he did. Leone, the other guard, glanced in the mirror. You want us to keep an eye on her? Cassian's gaze followed Mira until she disappeared into the crowd. Find out who she is, he said. Before we continue, take a moment to subscribe and like this video. It helps more people discover stories like this one. And tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Now, take a deep breath, because what happens next will change everything. Monday came with the taste of stale coffee and a headache that had slept beside her. Mira dragged herself out of bed long after sunrise, still half lost in the fragments of last night. Cassian's unreadable eyes, Rafe's shadow at his shoulder, the black car waiting across the street like a silent punctuation mark. She tried to laugh at herself in the mirror while pinning her hair. You asked a stranger to dance, not a ghost to follow you home? But the reflection didn't join in. By the time she reached the agency, the office was already humming. Screens glowed with photo grids from the Aurelia Gala, sponsors smiling, donors posing, and one particular image that made her stop mid-step. There, in the corner of a society page draft, was herself, hand in hand with Cassian Vorr under the chandelier. Morning, celebrity. Kay appeared behind her, grinning with caffeine and gossip. Half the city's press is asking who you are, and before you panic, yes, it's a flattering photo. Mira forced a smile. It looks staged. It looks expensive, Kay said. Also, guess what? The Vorr Foundation just signed a new PR contract with us, which means your team is handling all their post-gala coverage. The words hit like static. We're representing the Vorr Foundation? Effective immediately, Kay said, waving an email printout. Their chairman personally requested it. Cassian Vorr, heard of him? Mira sank into her chair, the world narrowing around the monitor's glow. She'd heard the name whispered in boardrooms, usually followed by nervous laughter. A man who rarely appeared in public. A name that made even seasoned executives lower their voices. Yes, she said softly. I've heard of him. The morning blurred into chaos. Press releases, quote approvals, a conference call that refused to end. Mira typed through it all, her pulse tapping faster than the keys. Every time she reread Cassian Vorr's name, something inside her tightened. At noon, Kay leaned over her cubicle wall again. You've got someone in reception asking for you. Says it's about the foundation. Mira's stomach turned to ice. Who? Kay shrugged. Didn't say. But the receptionist looks like she's about to salute him. Mira stood. Her reflection in the glass partition looked composed enough. Blouse crisp, lipstick precise, but her pulse betrayed her. The reception area was all glass and minimalism, and in the center of it sat Cassian Vorr, reading a newspaper like a man who owned the concept of patience. His guard stood by the doorway, suits cutting lines through the air. She hesitated in the doorway. Mr. Vorr. He folded the paper. Miss Cavell. His tone was polite, but the courtesy felt deliberate, practiced. You didn't tell me we'd be working together. I didn't know until this morning. Then it's a pleasant surprise. He rose, buttoning his jacket. May we speak privately? Every instinct told her to say no. Every professional rule said yes. She nodded. My office is down the hall. They walked together, his silence weightier than conversation. Inside her small office, Cassian took in the space. A modest desk, framed certificates, a single dying plant, and sat without invitation. I came to thank you, he said. For what? For last night. His gaze moved to the window, then back to her. Your discretion was appreciated. Mira frowned. Discretion? I panicked and begged you to dance with me. That's hardly discreet. Yet you didn't ask for more afterward. Most would have. You mean attention? I mean access. There was something about the way he said it, too measured, too knowing, that made her feel like the air between them was being mapped. Was this visit about gratitude, she asked, or surveillance? His lips curved, almost imperceptibly. Perhaps both. Gratitude for your professionalism, curiosity for your judgment. She crossed her arms. And how am I doing so far? He didn't answer. Instead, he leaned back, the sunlight slicing across his cufflink. Join me for lunch tomorrow. We'll discuss the Foundation's next campaign. You have a communications director for that. I prefer direct conversations, he said. Less noise. Mira opened her mouth to object, but he was already standing. I'll send the details. The meeting was over before it began. Cassian nodded once to her, once to his guards, and left her office with the quiet efficiency of someone used to doors opening before he touched them. When he was gone, the air seemed to breathe again. She didn't notice her phone vibrating until Kay shouted from down the hall, Your phone's dancing on the desk, girl. It was a message from an unknown number. She didn't need to read the name to know. Darren. I saw the photo. You've been busy. Darren. Be careful who you get close to, Mira. Some people collect women the way they collect companies. Darren. Men like Cassian Vorr, Don't dance without purpose. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, anger simmering beneath her ribs. Mira, don't text me again. Darren, you think he's your protector? He's worse than I ever was. She deleted the thread and set the phone face down, pretending her hands weren't shaking. The rest of the afternoon unraveled slowly. Kay came by with campaign drafts. Mira approved them on autopilot. At 5, she tried to leave quietly through the back exit, but the receptionist intercepted her. There's a car waiting for you, Miss Cavell. I didn't order one. The driver said it's from the Vorr Foundation. Her pulse stumbled. Did he give a name? Just said Mr. Vorr wanted to ensure you got home safely. Mira stepped outside. The black limousine idled at the curb, sleek and soundless. Its windows mirrored the city. No glimpse of who sat inside. The driver held the door open without expression. This isn't necessary, she said. Mr. Vorr insists, he replied. Her instincts argued, but standing there on the sidewalk, caught between pride and exhaustion, she felt the same pull as before, the quiet gravity Cassian carried, the illusion of safety in his orbit. She exhaled. Fine. The leather seat was cold against her legs. As soon as the door closed, the world outside muted. City sounds dissolved into the low hum of the engine. The tinted partition at the front was closed. She couldn't see the driver. Her phone buzzed again. One last message from Darren. Darren, you don't understand who you're sitting with. The car merged into traffic, gliding past the blurred lights of the city. Mira tried to shake the unease, but her reflection in the window betrayed her. Eyes wide, breath shallow, heart louder than the engine. At a red light, she caught the faintest movement in the glass, Cassian's reflection beside hers. He was seated across from her, silent, unreadable, watching. Mr. Vorr, she managed, I thought this was a courtesy ride. He tilted his head, that same precise stillness from the ballroom returning like déjà vu. It is. But courtesies can serve more than one purpose. The light changed. The limousine glided forward, smooth as silk over stone. For the first time since that night, Mira couldn't tell if she was being protected or kidnapped. The restaurant was quiet in the way expensive places always were. Soft light, slower air, the sound of money pretending to be manners. Mira arrived exactly on time, though the limousine that had dropped her off lingered outside like an unspoken warning. Cassian Vorr was already seated, of course. He didn't rise when she approached. He simply looked up, and the movement alone felt like being examined under glass. Mira, he said, gesturing to the chair opposite. You came. Hard to decline a man whose driver knows my address. Cassian's mouth hinted at amusement. Efficiency isn't intimidation, Miss Cavell. That depends on which end of it you're standing on. She sat, smoothing her blouse, pretending she didn't notice the way his gaze lingered for a beat too long. Not on her, but through her, as if reading the silence between breaths. A waiter appeared as if conjured, setting down wine she hadn't ordered. Cassian poured it himself, a measured hand, precise to the last drop. I wanted to talk about the foundation, he said. Our upcoming partnerships require a sharper public voice. Your agency seems adaptable. Mira tilted her head. You make philanthropy sound like espionage. Everything with influence is espionage, Cassian said simply. Philanthropy just hides it better. There it was, the undertone she couldn't place at the gala. His words were polished but cold, like stones smoothed by water that still cut when picked up. So what does the Vorr Foundation really do? She asked. Beyond charity dinners and scholarships for good press? He studied her over the rim of his glass. You think I build illusions? I think you're too careful not to answer questions directly. Something shifted in his expression. A glimmer of approval, maybe even amusement. Most people prefer the illusion. You don't. I work in PR, Mira said. I make illusions for a living. I just like to know when I'm standing inside one. Cassian leaned back, the faintest hint of a smile touching his mouth. Honesty suits you, Ms. Cavell. But it's also dangerous. I've heard that before, she replied. Usually from men who want me to stop asking questions. And did you? Never for long. He nodded once, almost like a salute. Good. The waiter brought lunch, something delicate she didn't remember ordering. The conversation drifted between corporate rhetoric and quiet traps, his every word balanced on precision. Mira responded with measured ease, refusing to shrink beneath the weight of his calm. He was testing her. She could feel it in the pauses. And though part of her wanted to pass whatever test this was, another part wanted to fail spectacularly, just to prove she could. When the plates were cleared, Cassian checked his watch. You'll hear from my office about the campaign proposal. I prefer direct correspondence. Meaning I'll be working with you personally? If you continue to impress me. He stood, every motion fluid. Enjoy your afternoon, Miss Cavell. Then he was gone, leaving behind a bill she never saw and a silence she couldn't shake. Back at the office, her inbox was a storm. Dozens of post-gala press requests flooded in, but one new email at the top made her pause. From v.foundation.ops@confidential. The subject line was plain. Financial summary draft, internal review. She frowned. That wasn't part of her department, probably a routing error. Still, curiosity edged forward like a cat. She double-clicked. A spreadsheet bloomed on the screen, rows of transactions, account codes, and figures that didn't add up. There were symbols in the margin, tiny annotations, shorthand numbers with slashes and circles. Mira's breath hitched. She hadn't seen those markings in years, her mother's handwriting. It couldn't be. Yet the memory arrived anyway. Nights as a child sitting at the kitchen table, watching her mother balance ledgers with the same shorthand. The symbols for reviewed, the looped notation for pending audit. Her mother had been an accountant, before the car crash, before the silence that followed. Mira scrolled faster, scanning the bottom of the document. The numbers funneled into offshore accounts, transfers labeled as donations, routed through shell companies bearing the Vorr Foundation name. Her pulse quickened. These weren't summaries. They were diversions. A chat notification blinked. Kate K. Hey, did you just get some weird file from the Foundation? Mira. Yeah. Why? K. Delete it. IT says it wasn't meant for us. Apparently sensitive internal data. Their words, not mine. Mira's hand hovered over the keyboard. Her instincts screamed both ways, delete it and pretend, or open it and know. Knowledge had always been her worst temptation. She saved a copy to her drive instead. At 6:30, the office thinned out. Mira stayed late, staring at the file until the numbers blurred. A knock at the door made her jump. Darren Holt stood in the doorway. What are you doing here? Her voice flattened into disbelief. Trying to save you from yourself, he said, stepping inside. His eyes were fever bright, his tie loose. You think I'm your problem, Mira? I'm nothing compared to him. Cassian! He laughed, low and bitter. You don't even know his real business. The Vorr Foundation is a front. He launders money through charity accounts, moves it overseas. The guy's untouchable. Get out. I'm serious. He stepped closer. You think it's coincidence your firm suddenly landed the contract? He's using you. You're bait. Pretty clever bait. Mira stiffened. That's enough. You got an email today, didn't you? Darren's tone sharpened. Some file that wasn't meant for you. Her silence was all the confirmation he needed. Yeah, I thought so. He moved to her desk, leaning forward. Delete it. Don't dig. You're in over your head. She stood, pushing the chair between them like a barricade. You have no right to be here. Neither do his men, Darren said, nodding towards the window. Mira turned. Through the glass, across the street, two figures in black stood near a parked sedan. One spoke into a radio. The other watched the building's entrance. Her chest tightened. See? Darren whispered. You think I'm crazy? They've been tailing you since last night. You're paranoid. I'm alive. That's the difference, he stepped back, lowering his voice. You want to believe Cassian's your savior, but he's the one pulling every string. I've been in his world. You don't walk out of it clean. Before she could respond, a vibration cut through the air, her phone lighting up on the desk. Cassian Vorr. Darren's eyes widened. You're still talking to him? She answered without thinking. Mr. Vorr. The line was too calm, too quiet. You opened a file you shouldn't have. Mira froze. Cassian's voice was low enough to chill the room. Don't delete it. Don't forward it. And don't leave your office. The line went dead. Outside the window, one of the suited men lifted his phone to his ear. Darren took a step back, his face draining of color. You see? He hissed. He already knows. Mira didn't move. The city beyond the glass blurred into streaks of light, the sound of traffic distant and hollow. She had crossed a line she didn't even know existed. And now someone on both sides of it wanted her to pay the price. The elevator ride to Cassian's penthouse felt longer than it should have. Mira's reflection in the polished metal walls looked calm. Too calm, considering the email she'd opened, the blood that had drained from Darren's face, and Cassian's voice echoing through her phone like a verdict. When the doors opened, the city fell away beneath her. Floor-to-ceiling glass framed the skyline like a painting. The penthouse wasn't just an apartment. It was a fortress disguised as elegance. Dark marble floors, minimalist furniture. Silence that hummed with restraint. Cassian stood by the window, jacket off, sleeves rolled, hands in his pockets. The posture of a man who didn't need to turn to know she'd arrived. You could have just asked me to delete the file, Mira said, her voice sharp enough to cut through the quiet. I could have, Cassian replied, without facing her, but you wouldn't have. You think you know me that well? I know curiosity when I see it. It's the most dangerous instinct a person can have. She took a step forward. So you sent those men to follow me? To make sure I didn't die of curiosity? He finally turned. To make sure no one else killed you for it. Mira blinked. What are you talking about? Cassian moved to his desk, retrieving a folder. He placed it down, the sound soft but final. You opened a window into something that doesn't forgive accidents. The ledger you saw isn't just accounting. It's currency in a war you don't see. Her throat went dry. Then make me see it. He regarded her quietly. The pause stretched, testing how long she could stand it. Darren Holt is working with my rivals, he said at last. He launders their money through charity accounts, ones your firm manages. You were never supposed to notice. Her pulse spiked. And my mother? Her handwriting is all over that file. Are you saying she worked for them too? Cassian's gaze softened for the first time, and that frightened her more than his control. Your mother wasn't working for them. She was exposing them. She traced the same transactions you just found. 2 weeks later, her car went off the bridge on Brookline Avenue. Mira stepped back as if the air itself had hit her. That was an accident. He shook his head once. No, it was a warning. The city lights glinted off the glass behind him, painting his silhouette in fractured gold. You shouldn't have opened that file, Mira. Whoever killed your mother will notice you did. Her voice wavered between disbelief and anger. You're telling me all this now? After letting me walk blind through your world? You came into it the second you asked me to dance. The words landed like thunder, too heavy, too certain. So what are you, Cassian? She demanded. A savior? A criminal? Both? He said nothing, and in his silence, she found her answer. The truth wasn't written on his face. It was carved in the way he didn't flinch. You run it, she whispered. The Vorr Syndicate. The name hung between them like smoke. Cassian didn't confirm it. He didn't need to. I'm not the villain you're imagining, he said. I built order where chaos once reigned. I keep the peace by controlling the people who break it. Peace through fear? She asked. Peace through leverage. Fear is just the byproduct. She took another step toward him, fury and fascination threading together. So what does that make me? Collateral? Leverage? His expression didn't change. A liability, one I don't want to see harmed. That's not protection, Cassian. That's control. Sometimes they're the same. Her laugh was sharp and cold. You sound just like him. Darren? His brow lifted slightly. My ex, she said bitterly. He used to tell me the same thing. That everything he did was for my own good. Cassian's voice dropped. Darren Holt manipulated you for his gain. I'm trying to keep you alive. And my mother? She shot back. Did you try to keep her alive too? Something flickered in his eyes. Pain, quickly buried. I didn't know her until it was too late. She sent me her findings the night before she died. I owe her more than I can ever repay. So that's what this is? Mira asked. Guilt dressed in Armani? The insult hung between them like a drawn blade. For a moment, she thought he'd lash out. Instead, Cassian's lips curved into the faintest, most dangerous smile she'd ever seen. You've got fire, Ms. Cavell. Most people tremble when they walk into this room. You throw stones. I don't scare easily, she said. You should. I won't. She met his gaze, steady, unflinching. If you think fear will make me stop, you've misjudged me. The silence that followed wasn't threatening. It was reverent. Cassian stepped closer, the space between them shrinking to the span of a heartbeat. Then maybe I did, he said softly. Maybe that's why you're still alive. Mira's pulse betrayed her calm. What happens now? You go home, he said. You forget what you saw. I'll clean this up. And if I don't, then you'll learn why people fear the Vorr Syndicate. The elevator doors opened behind her, silent as shadows. She didn't thank him. She didn't say goodbye. She just walked past, the echo of her heels filling the marble corridor. Cassian didn't follow, but she could feel his gaze all the way down. Night folded over the city like dark velvet. Mira reached her apartment, exhausted and wired all at once. She locked the door, then double-locked it, though she knew locks were meaningless against men like Cassian. The city hummed outside. Inside, her laptop screen glowed with the remnants of the file she couldn't bring herself to delete. The symbols her mother had written looped across the margins, half math, half secret language. She closed the lid and pressed her palms to her eyes. Stop, she whispered to herself. Just stop. A knock shattered the silence. She froze. It came again, soft, deliberate. Not the impatient rhythm of a neighbor. Something else. Cautiously, Mira approached the door. No sound from the hallway. No footsteps. She unlocked it, heart pounding, and opened it just an inch. No one stood there. Only a single white envelope on the floor. Her name was written across it in her mother's handwriting. Mira's hand trembled as she picked it up. Inside was a small leather notebook, familiar, worn, edges smudged with graphite. Her mother's old audit ledger. A crimson stain marred the corner. It wasn't ink. Mira hadn't slept. The notebook sat open on her kitchen table, its pages filled with lines of numbers and her mother's looping handwriting, a language of logic and secrets. Beside it lay her laptop, its blue glow stretching into the dark hours like an interrogation light. By dawn, the symbols started to make sense. Each pattern, each mark wasn't random. Her mother had developed a code, a way to disguise account numbers inside formulas. The ledgers weren't just about missing money. They mapped people, connections, names hidden in sums. When her phone rang, she nearly knocked over her coffee. "Miss Cavell." Rafe Doran's voice was low, careful. "Mr. Vorr said you'd likely reach out." "I didn't." "You opened the notebook, didn't you?" Mira hesitated. "How would you know that?" "Because I'm the one who found it." The line went quiet. Rafe continued, "If you want to understand what you're reading, meet me." "But not at your office." The cafe was quiet, tucked between two warehouses along the East River. Rafe was already there, nursing a cup of black coffee that had long gone cold. His sharp eyes missed nothing. He didn't waste time with greetings. "Cassian told me to keep you out of this." "Then why are you here?" "Because you won't stay out of it." Mira set the notebook down. "Tell me what you know." Rafe flipped through the pages like a man reading an autopsy. "These symbols, your mother wasn't just an accountant. She was working with internal auditors for an anti-fraud division that never went public. Her job was to trace money moving through shell charities. One of them was tied to Cassian's rivals, the Alviero Syndicate. And she found something she wasn't supposed to." He nodded. "The last file she sent before she died went missing." "This one." Mira folded her arms. "Cassian said the same thing? You expect me to believe she sent it to him?" "She did. Because he was the only one who could keep it from being buried." Mira's breath caught. "You're saying my mother trusted Cassian Vorr?" Rafe looked up. She didn't trust him. She used him. There's a difference. He slid her laptop closer. "Here. I decrypted one of the ledgers you opened. Look at this entry." Mira leaned in. The screen showed a list of transactions, but one column made her freeze. Dates, all from years ago, around the time she first met Darren. Next to each was a short note. "Holt transaction verified. Asset secured." Her mouth went dry. "Asset?" Rafe didn't look away. "You!" It hit like impact. She scrolled down, and there it was again. References to a primary subject monitored through the Alviero network. Funds routed to accounts tied to Darren Holt. "He wasn't just manipulating me," she whispered. "He was assigned to me." Rafe's tone softened. "He courted you to gain proximity to your mother's work. When she died, they kept you close to make sure the ledgers stayed buried. You were never supposed to find them." The world tilted. Every memory with Darren, every laugh, every fight, rearranged itself into something uglier. Mira closed the laptop. "And Cassian knew?" "He suspected." "That's not enough," she snapped. "He had every resource in the city." "He could have told me." Rafe didn't flinch. "Cassian doesn't tell anyone anything until he's sure. And you're not the only one he's protecting." "Protecting," Mira repeated bitterly. "Is that what you call it? Keeping me in the dark until it's convenient?" Rafe sighed, sliding the notebook back to her. You can hate him all you want. But the moment you opened that file, you became a target. He's the only thing standing between you and the people who killed your mother." Mira stood abruptly. "Then I'll ask him myself." Cassian's penthouse looked different at night. Colder. The glass reflected her face as she stormed in, Rafe trailing a few paces behind. Cassian was at the desk again, sleeves rolled, posture effortless. "I thought I told you to stay away," he said without looking up. "You told me half the truth," Mira replied. "That's not the same." His eyes lifted slowly. "Then enlighten me." "What did you find?" "That Darren was never my choice," she said, voice trembling with fury. "He was planted in my life to spy on my mother. To manipulate me, and you—" She took a step closer. "You knew something. You let me walk blind into this." Cassian didn't deny it. "If I'd told you everything, you'd have gone looking for proof. And they would have killed you." "They already tried killing my mother." "Yes," he said quietly, "and they succeeded." Mira's anger cracked under the weight of his calm. "You're no better than them," she whispered. "All this talk about order, about control, it's just another cage." Cassian rose, his height swallowing the room. "Maybe. But cages keep monsters from getting out." "And what are you, Cassian?" "The keeper or the monster?" For a moment his mask faltered. "Both," he said. Silence hung between them, thick as smoke. The city lights painted shadows across his face, half gold, half darkness. Mira turned to leave. "I don't need your protection." "You need allies," Cassian said, voice low but firm. "The Alviero network has already moved against you. They know about the notebook. They'll come for it. And for you. Then I'll handle them myself." He took a step forward, and the gravity of his presence made her still. "You can't. They've been doing this for decades. They buried your mother, Mira. They'll bury you, too." "Then tell me what to do." His answer came quietly, almost like an invitation. "Use me. Use my network. Let's burn them together." Mira stared at him, searching his face for deceit. But all she saw was certainty, an unshakable will forged in violence and strategy. "This isn't charity," she said. "No," he replied. "It's war." Rafe shifted near the doorway, watching her carefully, as if witnessing a moment that couldn't be undone. Mira hesitated, every instinct screaming at her to walk away. But beneath the fear, a colder truth surfaced. Cassian was right. She couldn't do this alone. "Why help me?" she asked finally. Cassian's expression softened, almost imperceptibly. "Because someone once believed I could be more than what I am. Maybe your mother was right." Her breath caught. "You knew her." He didn't answer. The silence between them felt like the edge of a blade. Mira extended her hand slowly. "Fine. We burned them together." Cassian looked down at her hand, then took it. His grip was steady, the heat of it grounding and dangerous all at once. For a moment, it wasn't a handshake. It was a pact. When their hands parted, Mira knew something irreversible had begun. She had just made a deal with the devil who might save her soul, or claim it entirely. The Aurelia Grand Hotel gleamed brighter than ever that night. The chandeliers that once bore witness to Mira's fear now dripped with gold light, reflecting a room of flawless faces and flawless lies. Music curled through the air, the kind of melody that smiled while hiding a blade. Mira adjusted the silver clasp on her wrist, pretending not to feel the faint vibration beneath it, the tiny pulse of the recording device hidden in Cassian's cufflink. Her dress shimmered like liquid night, each movement deliberate, rehearsed. Every heartbeat had been measured in advance. Across the ballroom, Cassian stood near the bar, black tuxedo sharp against the marble glow. His posture was ease and control woven together, one hand in his pocket, the other holding a glass he hadn't touched. To anyone watching, he looked like the king of the room. To Mira, he looked like the storm that ruled it. He met her gaze once, a silent signal. The hunt had begun. Darren Holt was here. She spotted him near the orchestra's edge, a glass of scotch in his hand, a predator's grin stretching across his face. The years had carved desperation into his charm. His suit didn't fit quite as well. His laugh rang louder than it should have. But his eyes, sharp, manipulative, familiar, hadn't changed. When he saw her, his expression flickered. Surprise, then pleasure. He excused himself from the group of businessmen and crossed the floor toward her. Mira's chest tightened, but her face didn't show it. She smiled the way Cassian had taught her, calm, poised, untouchable. "Darren," she said, voice smooth, "you clean up well. Didn't think you'd show your face here again." "I could say the same about you," he replied. "You look different, stronger maybe, dangerous." She tilted her head. "You always did mistake confidence for danger." He laughed softly, stepping closer. "And you always did know how to pretend you weren't afraid." Mira resisted the urge to recoil. The orchestra shifted to a slower tempo, a waltz. Cassian's men subtly adjusted positions along the perimeter, invisible to most, but not to her. "Dance with me," Darren said, offering his hand. She hesitated just long enough to make him think he'd won. Then she placed her hand in his. "Why not?" "For old time's sake." He led her to the center of the floor. The violins rose, elegant and haunting. Around them, other couples drifted in graceful circles, their movements synchronized in wealth and deception. Mira's pulse synced with the rhythm. Beneath her calm exterior, every nerve burned. Cassian's voice echoed in her head from the night before. "Get him to talk, don't press. Let him boast." So she smiled. "You always did love these charity events. A perfect place to look respectable while doing something very different behind the scenes." Darren's hand tightened on her waist. "Careful, Mira. You sound like you're accusing me of something." "Oh, not at all," she said lightly. "I'm just curious how you managed to get invited." "These galas tend to be selective," he smirked. "Let's say I have friends in high places. The kind that don't need their names printed on the program." "Friends like the Alviero network?" she asked softly. His eyes sharpened. "You've been asking questions." "And you've been giving answers," she said, her tone still playful. "Funny how money always finds its way back to familiar hands." He laughed, too loud, too careless. "You really think you're the first to notice? This city's entire charity scene runs on corruption. Even Cassian Vorr knows that." Her stomach twisted, but she held her smile. "Cassian Vorr?" "Oh, come on," Darren said, spinning her effortlessly. "You don't seriously believe that clean image of his, do you?" "Vorr's just the devil with better manners. Every dollar that flows through his foundation washes a dozen sins." "And yet," Mira said, keeping her voice light, "you're the one working with his enemies." The smile faltered. "How would you know that?" "Maybe I'm smarter than you remember." He chuckled darkly. "You were always smart. That's why they wanted you close." Her heartbeat stuttered. "They?" Darren leaned in, his breath hot against her ear. "You think it was an accident, Mira? Me finding you, loving you, breaking you. Number. You were leverage. Your mother's ledger was the key, and I was sent to find it. But you made me soft. You made me forget the job." Her hand trembled against his shoulder. "You used me." "I used everyone," he said. "That's what survival is." "Cassian's the same. You think he protects you because he cares? He protects you because he owns you. You're his asset now." Across the room, Cassian's gaze narrowed. Rafe murmured something beside him, but Cassian didn't move. Not yet. Mira forced herself to breathe. "So that's it? You sold me to his rivals for what, a few million?" Darren's grin widened. "Try 50, and if I play my cards right tonight, I'll walk away with twice that." She looked up at him, steady, unblinking, and smiled the kind of smile that used to make him think he was winning. "You always did love gambling, Darren. Only when the odds are in my favor." "Oh, I think they're about to change." His brows furrowed. "What?" The orchestra's tempo surged, and Mira turned sharply in his arms, positioning him toward the nearest chandelier. The light caught the small glint at her wrist, Cassian's cufflink, blinking red once. Rafe's voice came through Cassian's earpiece. "We've got it. The recording's live." Cassian exhaled, setting down his glass. "Keep eyes on them. No interference until I say." On the dance floor, Darren was still talking, too drunk on his own voice to notice the trap closing. "You think Cassian's your savior," he said, his voice lowering to a hiss. "But he's been playing you from the start. Everything you've done, every file you've opened, he let it happen. You're bait, Mira. He's using you to take out his rivals." Mira swallowed the ache in her throat. "And what about you? What were you using me for?" His smile returned, that same poisonous curve she remembered. "For the same thing, sweetheart." Power. The word hung between them, sharp as glass. Around them the waltz swelled. Couples turned. The chandeliers shimmered like frozen fire. Mira's pulse matched the beat. "Tell me," she said softly, "what happens when Cassian finds out?" "He already knows," Darren sneered. "He's probably watching right now." And he was. Cassian's eyes never left them. But for once, his face betrayed something cold and dangerous, pride laced with fury. Mira's voice barely broke the music. "You always loved attention. Too bad you'll hate the spotlight." "What's that supposed to—" The violins hit their final note. The music stopped. In the sudden hush, Darren's voice carried, clear and undeniable, from the speakers hidden around the ballroom. "You think he protects you? He owns you." The crowd froze, heads turned. Cassian stepped forward at last, the calm in his movements more terrifying than any shout. Darren's face went white as the realization hit. His gaze darted to Mira's wrist, then to the cufflink, blinking once, still recording. "You," he started, but she had already stepped back, out of his reach. The applause that followed wasn't for the music, it was for the trap. And under the glow of the same chandelier where everything began, Mira Cavell finally stopped hiding. The city woke to silence, but it was the kind of silence that followed collapse. By noon, rumors were already spreading. Offshore accounts frozen, shell corporations dissolved overnight, and 3 of the Alviero syndicate's top lieutenants missing. Not dead, just erased. Their names vanished from registries, their assets seized under quiet government orders that seemed to materialize out of nowhere. Cassian Vorr hadn't fired a bullet. He hadn't needed to. From her office window, Mira watched the world shift in real time. The skyline looked the same. Glass, light, illusion, but beneath it, power was rearranging itself, quietly and efficiently. On her desk lay 2 things: the worn notebook that had started it all, and a confidential file bearing Cassian's insignia. Vorr Foundation Internal Audit, Finalization Protocol. Her hands hovered over the papers, trembling slightly. Every thread of her life now tied back to his. Her assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Ms. Cavell, there's someone here to see you." He won't give his name. Before she could respond, the door opened. 2 men in dark suits stepped in, Cassian's kind of suits. Between them, a bound Darren Holt stumbled forward, wrists cuffed, his face pale and defeated. What is this?" Mira's voice faltered. One of the men set an envelope on her desk. "For your records, ma'am." When they were gone, only the faint scent of cold metal lingered. Darren stood shaking, his once confident grin now replaced by something smaller, the look of a man who'd run out of angles. "You set me up," he hissed. "You think this makes you safe? You think Cassian's your savior?" Mira looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I think you should start worrying about yourself." He laughed, bitter and hollow. "You really don't get it, do you? He's worse than me. He's just prettier about it." "Then maybe I'm tired of pretending good and bad are that simple." She pressed the intercom again. "Call the police. Tell them I have evidence related to financial laundering under the Alviero network." Darren froze. "You're handing me over?" "I'm giving you the justice you never gave anyone else." Within minutes, the sound of sirens rose faintly outside, not blaring, but controlled. The officers arrived with quiet efficiency, escorted him out, and disappeared back into the city. No spectacle, no chaos, just clean erasure. By the time Mira sat back down, she realized she hadn't stopped shaking. She opened the envelope Cassian's men had left. Inside was a single note, handwritten. "It's done." That evening, the world began rewriting itself. Financial columns on the news whispered of unexplained freezes. Government spokespeople denied involvement. Investors panicked. Yet behind the noise, Cassian moved like a ghost, directing the fall of empires from behind closed doors. Mira's inbox flooded with internal messages from her firm, the same company that had once dismissed her concerns about unusual donations. Now, their executives scrambled to save themselves. And at the center of it all was Victoria Alcott, the firm's senior director and the woman who'd smiled at Mira's promotion while feeding intel to Cassian's rivals. When Mira entered the boardroom, Victoria was already waiting, her usual poise cracking under the pressure. "Mira," she began, voice trembling but polished, "you've been busy." "You could say that. I want you to understand, none of this was personal. We were protecting the firm's interests. By leaking my files? By signing false audits under my name?" Victoria's mask slipped. "You think you're innocent in all this? Cassian Vorr doesn't save people, he collects them. You're just the latest trophy in his glass case." Mira stepped closer, her tone calm and cutting. "Maybe. But unlike you, I know which side of the glass I'm standing on." Victoria's breath caught. "You wouldn't dare!" "Oh, I already did." Mira set down a flash drive on the table. "These are your communications with the Alviero accounts. I've copied everything to federal servers. Consider it my resignation. And your confession." Victoria paled. "You'll ruin us all." "No," Mira said quietly. "I'll clean us." When she left the office, her hands were steady. For the first time, she felt something close to peace. Cassian's penthouse was darker that night, lit only by the city bleeding through the glass. He stood by the window again, the skyline reflected across his face. "You handled it well," he said as she entered. "I didn't do it for you." He turned, a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. "Of course not. You did it for control." Mira folded her arms. "So this is what you wanted from me? To be another piece on your board?" "No." He moved closer, stopping just within reach. "I wanted you to see the truth. Power isn't violence, Mira. It's control. Violence ends things. Control builds empires." She studied him, trying to decide if he was teaching her or testing her. "Then teach me," she said finally. Something shifted in his expression, pride, curiosity, maybe even respect. "You're sure?" "I don't want to be protected anymore. I want to understand what it takes to never need protection again." Cassian's gaze lingered on her, the silence between them charged with everything unspoken: trust, danger, inevitability. Slowly, he extended his hand. It was the same gesture he'd made the night they met under the chandelier. But this time, she didn't hesitate. Her fingers slid into his, not in fear, but in choice. The skyline burned behind them, the city remade under quiet justice, not by gods or monsters, but by two people who had learned that survival was its own kind of war. And in that war, control was the sharpest weapon of all. Winter had melted into spring, and with it, the city seemed to breathe differently. The chaos that once pulsed through its veins had slowed into something quieter, almost elegant. For the first time in years, the headlines about the Vorr Foundation weren't about scandal or speculation. They were about transformation. Under Mira's co-directorship, the organization had shifted from a shadowy front to a legitimate force for reconstruction. Hospitals were rebuilt, scholarships funded, and donations audited with a precision that bore her name as much as Cassian's. The ledgers that once buried secrets now told stories of redemption. And Cassian, the man who once ruled through silence and fear, now ruled through stillness. The Vorr Syndicate still existed, but its edges had softened. Deals were cleaner, the power quieter, the empire no longer dripping in threat but in control. Mira had learned his language, the unspoken art of timing, of restraint, of dominance without destruction. She didn't become him. She became his mirror. The night of the Foundation's annual gala arrived like a closing circle, the same hotel, the same chandelier, the same music that had once carried fear through her veins. The Aurelia Grand gleamed, every surface polished to perfection. The chandeliers hung like captured constellations, their light cascading across faces dressed in satin and purpose. Reporters whispered Mira's name with the reverence usually reserved for legacy families. "Mira Cavell," they said, "the woman who turned the Vorr name from legend to law." She stood beneath the third chandelier, the one she would never forget. Her violet gown shimmered under the light, the same hue as the night everything began. The orchestra played softly, a familiar waltz threading through the air. Mira watched the couples move across the floor, the same motions, the same rehearsed grace. Yet everything was different. Behind her, a voice spoke quietly. "You're still watching from the edges." She turned, and Cassian was there. He wore black again, but this time without the armor of it. The sharpness in his face had gentled, replaced by something rarer: ease. His smile wasn't the kind that concealed, it revealed. "I was making sure the lighting was perfect," Mira said, half smiling. "We can't have the co-director's first gala ruined by bad ambience." Cassian's eyes softened. "You've become impossible to intimidate." "Occupational hazard," she replied. "You taught me too well." He chuckled, the sound low and genuine. "I'm still not used to hearing you say that without sarcasm." "Don't get comfortable." The orchestra swelled behind them, and for a moment they simply stood there. Two people forged by chaos, now calm in its absence. Cassian stepped closer, his voice dropping just enough for only her to hear. "Can you please hide me?" Mira blinked, startled. Then laughter slipped from her, quiet and disbelieving. "From what?" He leaned in slightly, his breath brushing her ear. "From everyone who thinks I can't fall." Her chest tightened, not in fear, but recognition. The line that once began everything now circled back, transformed. "Then we dance," she whispered. He extended his hand, and she took it, not to escape this time, but to lead. They moved into the crowd, the light catching them as the waltz began anew. The air carried the scent of champagne and memory, the rhythm pulling them closer until it felt like the room revolved around them. Cassian's movements were still precise, but softer now, as if he'd learned that control didn't always mean resistance. Mira matched him easily, her steps confident, her gaze steady. "This feels familiar," he murmured. "It should," she said. "It's the same song." He smiled faintly. "You've changed the rhythm." That's what happens when both partners stop pretending one leads. For the first time in a long while, Cassian laughed without restraint. "You're dangerous when you're right. I learned from the best." They moved together as though they had always known this dance, the rhythm of trust built on defiance, of love carved out of survival. Around them, the world spun on, oblivious to the quiet revolution happening beneath the chandelier. Mira could feel the difference in every movement, the shift from fear to freedom, from secrecy to partnership. The woman who once whispered for safety now commanded the room that once made her tremble. As the final note lingered in the air, Cassian held her gaze. "So, what happens now?" She smiled, the kind that reached her eyes. "Now? We build. And after that?" "After that," she said, stepping back slightly, "we live." The crowd erupted in applause, mistaking their private moment for performance. Cameras flashed. The orchestra began again. Cassian bowed his head slightly, his voice just above the music. "You know, when I first saw you, I thought you were chaos. And now? Now I know you were order disguised as fire." Mira's eyes softened. "And you were power disguised as peace." They stood there for a moment longer, the world blurring around them. Two forces finally balanced, two stories finally whole. Cassian reached out once more, fingertips brushing hers. "Until next year's gala?" "Until then," she said, "but next time no secrets." He smirked. "No promises?" She laughed quietly, shaking her head. "You'll never change." "Neither will you," he said. "And that's why I trust you." The orchestra's final crescendo filled the hall. The chandeliers gleamed overhead, light scattering across mirrored floors like fragments of their shared history. Cassian's hand lingered at her back as he whispered, "You remember what you told me that first night?" Mira smiled. "I remember being terrified." "And now?" She looked up at the chandelier, at the reflection of herself standing beneath it, no longer hidden, no longer hunted. "Now," she said softly, "I lead." The music faded, but the echo of their dance lingered, not just in the ballroom, but in the empire they had rebuilt together. Under the chandelier's light, where fear once began and power was reborn, Mira Cavell no longer hid. She led. If this story has your attention, hit that subscribe button and let us know where in the world you're watching from. Every story we tell connects the past to the present, and we'd love to have you with us for the next one.